recommendations about what I should be talking about?
No, I thought you did a great job, and I think of covering. And of course, I always have questions for you, but I think the fun thing about this format is we want to make this really informal, and so feel free, put a question in the chat, or just feel free to unmute yourself. That's the nice thing about these conveniences. They can be they can be much more relaxed and open. And you know, Fallon, just I'll kick off. We've got a couple questions coming through right here, but one of the things I was going to ask you, and what I love about your story and your leadership journey, which I think is just so admirable, is the way you reached out to people. You stepped out and said, how can I help? How can I work with you? And so when you think about young women trying to navigate in rural and trying to find their way, you know, what's your top 3 points of advice for a young woman trying to navigate and you know, find their way and lead in rural?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, thank you. And I think that's so important. And I feel like it sounds like it's so simple just to say get involved, or just be fearless and don't maybe take yourself so seriously. I think, you know, we're the ones paying the most attention to ourselves. And so we get self-conscious sometimes. We're afraid to like try to speak up or reach out, and we're thinking it could be embarrassing or not appropriate or something. But I think there's a lot of power in just reaching out to somebody, and whether that be an email or a cold call, or trying to maybe attend an event that somebody might be at, or going to events that are intentionally designed for networking. Especially, you know, now that we're kind of coming out of COVID to some degree, going to these in-person networking events that maybe like chambers host, or just different organizations put on different events. And I absolutely love networking. So I realize that this is something that is a skill that I'm more maybe inclined towards, or something that I'm just more interested in. But I think there's a lot of power in just trying to step into your power and being confident in who you are and like what you want to do, especially if you have an idea of something you're interested in, or a topic that has spoken to you, or if there's an individual that for some reason has kind of gained your attention, just being able to approach them in some form and just start a conversation, even if it just starts out as an informational interview, and just asking them about their story and how they got there, and asking them for advice on how to get involved. I think that's always a great place to start. And then is a great place to start building those connections, because you never know where that will lead and who they'll lead you to. I've been really fortunate to have a really beautiful string of mentors, a few of which are on this call right now. And so that's always, you know, humbling too, but it's always nice to make these connections and just have an open mind into what they could lead to. It could be a one-time conversation, or it could be a lifelong friendship.
Yeah, and I think as I phrase that question as, you know, what's your advice to a young woman, but it's advice to all of us, because no matter what stage you are at in your career, it's like you gotta ask sometimes. You gotta step forward and ask. So Terry, I know you had a question. Did you want to pop in?
Yeah. Hi, Fallon. I'm Terry. I'm the board chair of 100 Rural Women, and I work with Teresa and Delaney and a bunch of people on this call. And it's really fun to hear your story about how you started out wanting to do diplomacy, and now here you are back in Brainerd doing food stuff. And I come from a communications background, so I have a question about the local food, and how do you connect people's desire for convenience in food and the importance of local. I'm in the cities, but I grew up on a farm, so I get where it all comes from. But to be honest, when I sit down to eat, I don't make that connection as directly as it sounds like you would like me to. So, what's the how do you address that issue? I'm just curious about if you think about that.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, and it has been really fun to be back in my hometown. I never thought I would move home when I left to go to college, and I'm so happy I did. Gosh, it's been the best experience to get to know my parents as people and not just my parents, and grow roots and experience your hometown as an adult. It's really pretty amazing and spectacular. So, but yeah, so I think. And however you perceive it, I think it is totally fine. I think that's what's beautiful is we all like have our own lens and we find different things important. And ultimately, I think what's hopefully what we're moving, it makes it easier. We just continue to build supply chains that maybe we don't have to think about it and be as intentional because it just is built in already. I think we're all so busy and it's hard to figure out how to keep up with all of these different topics and how to be thinking about things and how to be, having the least impact you can, while also making sure that you're fed and your family's fed and you're not getting hangry. That's one of my problems. And so I think I would be, this is why I think this is really fascinating as a food hub. And it's an easier pitch to make because we're able to source from so many different farmers and we're able to tell their stories along the way. And so we're very transparent in like where this food comes from. It's a shorter supply chain. These farmers are doing excellent work on the land. They're fantastic stewards. They're really taking into account all of these different factors to really produce food in a way that is beneficial for people on the planet and to the best of their ability in a given year and what the current knowledge and what the resources they have available are. And to consumers, I think usually the pitch is just like, how do we make this easier that fits into their lives? And so we have typically two programs we work through. We have a CSA, or community supported agriculture, which is basically like a food subscription box. And so this is a great way to be introduced to the local food scene because it follows the season and it's just basically an assortment of whatever's available in a given time frame. So typically starting in June and ending in September. And so I think that's a fun way to get people thinking about it in a different way. But typically the pitch is just it's an exciting opportunity. You open this box of produce and you have all of these different products. Some you might be familiar with and some you might not be. And then we pair that with recipes and storage tips and a story about the farmer or one of the farmers that's featured in that box. And so I think that what's been nice about working in this scene is just like, you can get people excited about it. And if we just can have some sort of facilitation to the community building, because it's so awesome to like eat a carrot and know where it came from.
Well, it sounds like, you're building an experience for people. That's
totally
kind of what I'm hearing. And I had never thought about it that way before. That's really cool. Thanks.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and that's what it's all about, right? I mean, how do we just make everything a little bit more exciting? I think most of our lives we get bogged down by a lot of stressful elements, and sometimes meal prep and food is one of them. And so how do we remove that and just make it more exciting and make it just something that's thrilling to get together at the table and be able to trace where your food came from and feel even more like ingrained in where you live and love where you live just because of that.
And it tastes even better.
It does. It tastes so much better. And if you get, so I think even the small element of being connected to where you live through what's available to eat, there's just this excitement that comes along with it that is just indescribable. And I think right now we're starting to feel this a little bit maybe with asparagus. Like I feel like I'm just like imagining this and I'm just getting so pumped. And so I feel like it takes some time to even just transition your brain to like be thinking in these ways. But I think the food helps. Then the food can be a great teacher too.
I love it. And Fallon, in the chat, I know you've got a couple things going on, but Karen Sheffing just put in the chat that she has a very similar career path, and she has a French and international relations degree, went to grad school in California to become a diplomat, took an internship in transportation at the local level in Monterey, California, and has been in transportation ever since. And she moved back to Minnesota in 2006. So I think that's the very similar path that you're on. And I met Karen. I was fortunate to get to present to Women in Transportation last week. And so it's fun, all these different connections that you meet with in different sectors, but it's always fun to see people's paths. And I had another question in here that came through on the MinneAg collaborative, which I am one of those people that's guilty of. I always have a conflict at that time when when the group meets, but in having a way too long a background in the legislature, and I know it's changed quite a bit since I've left the process, but when you think about, the question was, when you think about, that legislative process and figuring out how to better connect, what are the top 3 things that you think people should do to be able to be more aware of policy and have impact in policy at that state legislature?
Yeah, and I think that's what's been so beautiful about the MinneAg network is trying to facilitate that process. And so really trying to, be nonpartisan, but be informing everybody what is happening. We started a Google group, and so it's essentially like an email listserv you can sign up for, and then people can send out action alerts and saying like, this is going on right now. If you're interested, like here's a template for a letter of support you can send to your legislator. And so I think that's been something we've been talking more about, and how do we make it easier to get involved with like tips and the structure to be able to do so. And so I think right now we're going through getting into final negotiations and everything within the legislature. And so I'm actually, after this, we'll be sending out a letter of support to the Google group to essentially just say that we are in support of an ag bill that really does support a really resilient and a robust food system, because that's the worry right now, is that nothing is actually even going to be passed. And so, and we need funding to continue to really build stronger supply chains, and at least fund what's currently existing to support our farmers on the ground, especially going through coming back from a really tough season with a huge drought and going into this next growing season already. So I think the best way to get involved is maybe find an organization that is doing policy work of some kind, and just asking them if there's like a listserv, or maybe they have that on their website. So right now I'm involved with Land Stewardship Project and Minnesota Farmers Union, and then MinneAg. And so all of these have allowed me to have some insight without being entirely absorbed, because that's a lot of time. And I don't think any of us probably have that unless it's part of your job. But I think, letters are always great. If you have a specific issue in mind, you can send those to your legislator and find all of their information on the government websites, whether that be city, county, state, nation, or calling them if that is more of interest to you. Is whatever form of communication that I think calls to you the most is pretty accessible for these days. Or Twitter, I guess that's powerful these days too. So yeah, I don't know.
I love
Did I
it.
answer the question, Teresa?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because I think that's one of the things is sort of demystifying that process too, that you can have a voice and you can have an impact, and especially with the collaborative you're building. So I'm just loving watching that come together and watching the listserv. I think it's incredible. And just a couple things in the chat. Gail Peterson, who lives not far from me, and Marcel, Gail does a lot of work internationally, but she's got a good resource there. And we'll share the resources from the chat, but just about a resource in Vermont and globally. And so just sort of looking through, Delaney, did you have a question you wanna?
I did. Fallon, I was curious if you could share a little bit about what pushed you to attend law school versus trying to hire or involve an external lawyer with the work you're doing.
Yeah, that's a great question. And so it's something that I've always had some inclination towards. I come from a long line of lawyers, which I found kind of annoying and didn't necessarily want to be involved in it. But I had a lot of interest in this through college. So it's like those were the courses that really spoke to me. I really liked philosophy, and I liked public policy and how those connected, and the discussion and the debate. I really, I think I value just the diversity of ideas and how we can come together to discuss how we see the world and figure out paths to move forward. And it just started really making more and more sense. And just, I wanted to be trained in a more specific way and have I typically describe myself as having a bit of a pinball brain, as I bounce around a lot, and it's very exciting. It's usually pretty fun, but I'm really became really excited about the concept of being trained in this more specific way to be able to analyze something and understand exactly how I could contribute to it. And serve my community in a very specific way. And so coming to the table with a set of skills and something that's valuable in this unique way, and being able to assist in that way instead of finding somebody else to do it, I figure it would make sense for me to just pursue it on my own and continue on that path.
Thanks, Fallon. And as I had mentioned, Gail had a comment earlier in the chat, but we'll share this too, but she'd love to share some contacts that she has on law, policy, and food systems. So that would be great. And someday I'm going to meet Gail in person. We live like 6 miles from each other, but through COVID, we haven't been able to meet. So excited about that. So she's a great resource for us to have in northern Minnesota and rural. So really exciting. So I know we're headed up to our to the end. Does anybody have any questions before we start to close out here? I don't want to, hopefully I didn't miss anything in here.
This is Heather. I'm wondering if you can hear me okay. I'm embarrassed with really terrible internet. Okay. So I'm not sure, Fallon, if you'd have tips on this, but I figure it wouldn't hurt to ask. So I'm in northeastern Minnesota and I'm working under a USDA grant right now, which is actually an FMPP grant, which is more so promotion of goods versus helping farmers with production, which is really what we need. My grant runs up in November, and it's a lot of the grants that we've looked into, it's really very limiting to help with production. And that's really what we need to actually get things rolling up here. We have one farm to school in Aurora, and if it wasn't for almost kind of a commercial location, I don't know if their program would continue. Because they just can't get the producers to provide the contracts to provide the food. Mm-hmm. So, maybe 2 parts, but do you have any thoughts, tips, resources for production specific funding that helps support folks kind of connect with those resources? I guess that's it, because I would love to continue to do what I do, but actually do it more meaningful and not just, helping people promote their goods and sharing the word on farmers markets is great. But I mean, I sell at a little farmers market, and sometimes I'm the only one with produce or the only one with canned goods.
Wow.
And very short season up here. So any advice?
Yeah, and I think that's a recurring issue, and that's what's so difficult about it, is how do you actually plug into the proper resource and the proper contacts to make these things happen. And something that we're struggling with too, and trying to figure out how do we get this information to growers, and how do we get them to the proper outlet to have their answers and their problems answered or whatnot. And so actually I think we're working on maybe developing more technical assistance within the food hub to be able to provide that as a resource to our growers. I think right now, off the top of my head, I think it would be beneficial to potentially connect to Sustainable Farming Association. If you have a chapter within your area, I'm trying to remember which one it might be, Lake Agassiz, or I'm sure that David Abaz would be a great contact with the RSDP, and he's linked into just so many different things in that area. And so I think that's always something to be thinking about, or regional sustainable development partnerships through the U of M, or the NRCS office. They actually do a lot of different support and have a lot of grants available to farmers that I think they're underutilized to some degree. And I can't remember what the acronym stands for right now, so I'm very sorry, but they do a lot with they can, I think, be a great resource to try and figure out how to support through different funding streams or different ways to certify a product that can alleviate some barriers that way. And actually, is there anybody else on the call who has advice? I'm specifically kind of looking at you, Arlene. That might be something that you could assist with as well. And that's what's beautiful about these networks, right?
MDA, connect with MDA for some of the value-added grants for growers to increase production. Connect with Extension for some technical resources for growers for, good agricultural practices that some districts might want them to have in order to get the product from the field to the school. And one of the reasons why I'm so excited about Fallon going to law school, even though I'm going to terribly miss her, and I've learned a lot from her. So this isn't just a one-way street mentorship, Fallon. Is that Fallon has an innate ability to connect the dots and to understand systems and system problems, and that we're not going to continue to make headway until there are some statutes and regulations that Fallon knows is my soapbox of all the work that we've done in food production isn't going to mean anything if there aren't some statutes or policies that continue to build on the progress that we've made. So, and you can connect to me as well. I'm sorry, I don't remember who was asking the question for other resources, but I'd start with MDA. They've got great grant resources and extension for technical assistance. And Fallon, great job.
Gosh, my heart. Yeah, blushing.
I love it. And Heather, just follow up. We'll be sure to get you connected. We're putting resources in the chat also, but that's the beauty of it.
I will say I work with David Abaz probably once a week.
Perfect.
I looked into some MDA, but there's some of it is you need such a big almost match that, here's 10% and it's not exactly ideal. And I did work with, so the emerging farmers, I know I bring this up every time I talk to the gal that heads that up, but the emerging farmers through MDA, there was not one person picked for St. Louis, Lake, or Cook County. So I've bugged her about that every time I see her in a Zoom meeting, because we really need more representation up in this area. And one of the projects we did last year was we had received some funding and we ended up awarding $10,000 to 3 different farmers for different projects. And we actually met with Tom Peterson to try to figure out how we can continue that work, because that was kind of a one-off. We have this money, but we had like 17 wonderful projects, and every year we could probably get more. So we did try to work with him to try to figure out if there's a way, and we're still kind of in talks, but it just seems like the northeastern Minnesota almost is always just mining. And I'd really love us to be farming. We tried to do an aggregated CSA last year with kind of a pilot program with the USDA grant, and we had to drive 152 miles to meet 5 farmers. So it's hard when it's a rural area and you're so distanced, but there's really talented farmers up here that if they could have a little bit of a boost to up production, I think they could support a lot more of the farm to school, farm to institution, the farmers markets, that kind of thing. So I won't stop trying, and I appreciate the tips and advice, but we need.
Well, thank you for your energy in this space too. And that's awesome. Well, and hopefully we can keep working around the state and connecting and making it easier, right? That's the beauty of trying to figure out how to facilitate some of these networking events and trying to just build community and capacity for all of us together.
Yeah, well, and just having events like this where I can meet people statewide and not just in our region, because we all just kind of commiserate up in our region and like, what can we do? So it's cool to be able to have this opportunity to meet with folks across the state, whether it's the farmers market calls or something like that, just seeing what other people are doing and how we can kind of tap into that. So thank you all.
Yeah, thanks so much, Heather. And I think that is the whole purpose of this, is like, how do we better connect? And Arlene's super collaborative, and Fallon. So I mean, that's what an amazing model we have at Sprout. So I think how we better connect across the state is super important. And the chat's been busy. And Tana, I didn't mean to miss yours. That we've been talking so much about food, but Tana was talking a little bit about the work she's doing in California with waste. How do we sort waste? So it's that whole cycle that we think about. And I know we're running on time here. And Fallon, I just want to thank you so much for doing this today. And we are putting this on the website. A couple people from MDA were coming. I got regrets this morning with meetings. So we'll get this out to all the people that were going to come and couldn't make it, and who have sent regrets that they couldn't be here today, just to keep this connecting. And with 100 World Women, we're going to continue to do these Ask a Leading Women. And we, the real goal is to do, across sector, across, age, race, culture, experience, socioeconomic status. We're really trying to get a large group of women with very diverse experiences to really share how they've navigated and where they're at today and where they want to go. And I would be remiss this morning, I know we got to wrap it up here, but Fallon's just an incredible young woman. And I know, as Arlene said too, I mean, she gives us a lot of hope for the future. And I just want to also mention Delaney is on the call today too. Delaney's our grad student, and been working with us the last year and really led our 100 convenings we just did. And here we have two amazing young women, Fallon going off to law school and Delaney's going off to medical school. So, so I just feel very fortunate to have gotten to work with these young women and look forward to the future with them. So, Fallon, if you have any last comments, otherwise we will wrap it up and get it, let everybody get on their way.
Thank you all for your leadership. And I'm always inspired, and I love the just groups like this where we can get together and share resources. And I mean, I feel like I would love to just connect with all of you individually too. I think there's so much room to collaborate. And I think that all of these things do connect, right? Like that is usually how I talk about things anyways. And so whether it be waste systems or transportation, I mean, these all come together and serve our communities. And that's what it's all about, right, Dawn? Resilient communities. Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
So I guess I just want to thank you. And I just wanted to kind of just provide one last plug for kind of like the power of serendipity. This is something I'm just kind of always feel like really blessed to go through the world and be open to experiences and what comes of any situation. And so I think it was awesome that I was able to be introduced to Teresa through another mutual friend. And I'm just excited to continue this and connect with you all and hear what all amazing work that you've all got going on. And hopefully we can just keep building together, because that's how we really do build sustainable and equitable systems moving forward. So thank you.
I love it. Thank you, Fallon. And I know we went a couple of minutes over. We started a couple of minutes late, but thanks for everybody's patience.